What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Kaizen Life. I am still Guy Rogers. As you can see, I'm rocking my Dominic Cruz t-shirt. Love the man. One of my favorite UFC fighters. I think that he was one of the few people that really brought that awkward footwork style, and there's been documentaries about it. Fantastic to watch. If you haven't seen him fight, go back, watch his WEC career, and obviously his UFC career as well. But I think he was, in my opinion, WEC was when he was really at his peak. So anyway, also another thing, thank you to I believe I have 15 subscribers now. I feel like Logan Paul, except I can fight, so that's terrific. Obviously keep subscribing, keep sharing. It's really cool seeing these comments coming in. And one of the comments that I had today, the other day, was basically, what do I think the deficiencies are in more traditional styles of self-defense? And that's a really good question, and I'm gonna break it down into two separate parts, because I think that first I should sort of explain what I think the most important parts of self-defense are, and then obviously answer the question. So basically, for me personally, and again, I need to explain, my history is all insecurity. So when I was much younger, I worked as a bouncer in a lot of very dodgy clubs in Melbourne. Enjoyed it. I really think that, self-defense wise, the best thing is to be able to talk, communicate, have a good sense of humor. 99.9% of the time, you can talk your way out of most things. One of the best security guards I ever worked with, I don't think ever got in a physical fight. He was so good at talking. So that's really important. But as far as the physicality and I guess the more esoteric answer, the most important thing to me personally is situational awareness. So be aware of what's going on around you. I'm talking about, for example, if you're walking down the street at night, don't walk to the side and look scared with your head down. Walk in the center, walk confident, walk like you got somewhere to be. It's so important because it gives that aura. And know what's around you. If there's large groups of people and they look like a bit iffy, trust your gut. Go away, go a different route. It's always intelligent to trust your gut. Likewise, when I go into a room and I think, this could be a bit dodgy, something may happen, I look around, where are my exits? What's on the ground and on tables and stuff like that could be a weapon? Because, if it's going to come to a physical confrontation, I'd rather it be fist to fist rather than me facing someone with a knife. That's never a good thing. So that sort of situational awareness is massive. Indicators, aggressive indicators. If someone's clenching their fists, they're probably getting ready to fight. If 1 second they were really verbal and then they go quiet, that could be an indicator that they're getting ready in their mind to start throwing punches. So all of that sort of stuff, massively important. I would even break it down to start, if you know that a confrontation is going to occur, start looking at their pockets, start looking at, are they hiding anything that could be used as a weapon, all of that sort of stuff. So situational awareness, number one. Number two, distance, always distance. And I'm not talking about, if you're a kickboxer and you're at a kicking range, if you're a boxer, you're at a striking range, that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. If someone pulls a knife on you, then the distance you need to be at is 100 meters that way and still going. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Distance can be simply, putting a door between you and someone else. Now they can't get to you. Putting, a chair in front of you means that, they have to get past that, and that gives you a chance to get the hell out of there. If you do have to fight, then distance is relevant insofar as, are you all in or all out? Are you going to try and get out of this situation and just get the hell out of here there, which is always the safe bet? Or if you're going to be all in because you realize this is a fight for your life, then you need to get in very, very quickly, do what you need to do with purpose, and be very, very effective with it. And that comes from training. But what I mean by that also is put your hands on the person. Make sure that you can feel where their body's going. If I'm in close to someone, it takes a lot of the power off, if they're trying to throw punches at me. And also, if my hands are on their arms, I can feel where that's going. I can start setting up what I'm going to do next, which usually for me will be a takedown. So distance, absolutely massive. The third thing, which I think is really, really important and massively overlooked in a lot of different areas, is your body's reaction when something like that occurs. So what actually happens to your body? And I can tell you, most of the time, most people will have an adrenaline dump. We've all had one. Your body floods with adrenaline, and it's your body's way of giving you that extra boost to do whatever it is you have to do. But what you need to be aware of is that it'll cut your vision down by about 20%. So your peripheral vision gets cut down. Your movement in your legs will be drastically reduced. Finite motion will go pretty much out the window. You know what I mean? If you've ever been scared and tried to put a key in a door, more quickly? How many times do you fumble that? So finite motion is really hard to use when you're having an adrenaline dump. So I'm going to come back to that, but I think that it's really important to know what your body is going to do. And sparring and grappling and all of these sort of things, free rolling, it's not about the technique you would use in a fight necessarily. What it is about is getting your mind ready for combat, the stress of combat. So when you're sparring someone and they're throwing punches at you, you're not having an adrenaline dump because that's the environment you're used to. So when in the real world it happens, hopefully it lessens that effect. Same with grappling. In grappling, you know, if someone's putting you in an armbar, you can tap out, it's all good. You're not heart rate, you're not getting an adrenaline dump. So in the real world, when it happens, you would hope that you can keep yourself calm enough to start thinking through the situation. So hopefully that answers that side of it. Now I'm going to answer what I personally think are the downsides in traditional martial arts. And I'm going to start where I left off. I think that a lot of martial arts that use wrist locks, stuff like that, for example, I'm going to use Hapkido because I've done it a lot. I have quite a lot of experience in it, but I've also seen the same sort of stuff in Aikido. Look, McDojo, the YouTube channel has so many examples of some crazy martial arts out there, so check that channel out, it's fantastic. But yeah, basically with, for example, Hapkido, so to get your first belt, I believe there was about 20 different techniques you needed to know. And most of them were actually from the same situation. So person puts their hands out, you do this wrist lock, and then the next one is a different wrist lock and so on. Now, if I know 20 different wrist locks, and I get in a situation where I have to use it, and I have no finite motion because I'm terrified, I have to choose which one to use and then try to make it work. And that really is a big ask. So the too much technique is really redundant. You need to know one thing really, really well. If you only know one wrist lock, but you can apply it from any situation, that's much better than knowing 100, but not knowing where to use it. So I hope that kind of makes sense. So that's the one thing I would say. Overcomplication of styles. Bruce Lee once said very famously, discard what is useless, keep what's necessary. I'm paraphrasing, but I think that that's very, very important to understand. The next thing I think that traditional martial arts really, I guess, sort of let them down a little bit, and maybe it's that they haven't evolved as such, but they don't pressure test anything that they sort of do. And I'm not trying to offend anyone, I'm only talking about my experience. But for example, in Hapkido, we never sparred. In the, I did a lot of Wing Chun competitions, you know, all these national all-style competitions, and the sparring was really point-based, and it was obviously designed for the style that you were sparring against. So what I mean by that is, you wouldn't get, you know, a boxer sparring an Aikido guy. They don't cross clubs like that. So Aikido learns to fight against Aikido with a compliant person. Hapkido is exactly the same thing. We used to train, the other person would put their hand out and I'd do the technique, and then they do the technique, and he'd flip and I'd flip and all this sort of stuff, but we never sparred that. So how would I know whether that would work in a real situation? Every once in a while you have to do, I guess, what they call the fight gone bad scenario. This is the worst case scenario, will it work? And I don't think that many clubs do that. I don't think that they spar enough. I don't think that they're open enough, whether it be an ego thing or whether it be that they, you know, everyone wants to believe that their style is the most effective style in the world. And if there were chinks in the armor, that would show under pressure. So I think that that's a bad thing. Like, you know, a lot of people don't train just for self-defense. So it doesn't matter whether it's the most effective martial art in the world. That's an impossible question to answer. So please don't ask me that. But what I'm going to do now is just show a little clip of a self-defense video we have from my own club. It's not about the actual technique. It's more about, would this realistically work? And notice that we talk about the finite motion as opposed to gross motor. I've also mentioned before I'm going to talk about my BJJ experience, so we'll get into that after this. Hope you like it.
So we're going to go through a couple of grabs, street scenario. Rather than try and work on more finite motion, really complicated wrist controls and so forth, the more natural reaction and no stress is applied is gross motor skills. So big body movements rather than arm locks, finger locks and so forth. So we'll get into it. Alright, we'll start off with a traditional bear hug. So Owen comes up from behind, grabs me around here, obviously controlling top part of my body. He's a strong dude, so it's very little chance for me to get out of here. What I want to do is obviously get out of the position, but I want to distract him. For smaller guys, distractions and distraction techniques are the key. So if you don't have the strength to muscle out of it, what you want to do is soften them up a little bit. So that may be headbutts, groin strikes, stomping on his foot, kicking his shin, whatever the case may be. So soften him up a little bit. Still works with bigger dudes just to distract him, get the tension away from here. So I stomp on his foot, groin strike, or whatever I need to. In that situation, even if he has on a tight, but if he does release for a certain period of time, that's where you take your advantage. So it's relatively quick bang, and then you move to the next step. So from here, I want to reposition my legs. I want to reposition them so I can take out his balance. So in this original position, Owen's got it tight. Once again, distraction, kick his shin, whatever the case may be. I'm bringing my feet round behind his feet. Lower my body position. Like in judo, you've got to lower your hips below his to actually get him off balance. From there, what I'm going to do is elbow strike him and rotate my body around to drop him off. That makes sense? So the first part of it, distractions. Once again, Owen's here. If he's got his arms around here or underneath, the more Versen style, doesn't matter, this is a little bit better. I can jab his eyes, headbutt. From here, you can strike him. Even better, you can release that pinky, snap that off. That generally distracts him. The goal isn't to release his actual hold as well, but just enough to distract him. So we'll go back to the traditional over the cross. Same difference. From here, now you can't reach up as much. But striking, to distract him, to soften him, bringing our leg behind his, lowering our body position. Remember, trying to have your body bent over because he's got control the whole time. And he may knee you as well. So, he grabs. When I bring this round, my body has to be straight, upright, bending my hips, lowering that. From here, using momentum, rotate him round, bring him over that knee. That make sense? Alright, so I'll do it to him. He can explain. He can demonstrate it as well. So, good grip. That's it. I'll get a couple on, so that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So it works on a much smaller guy, bigger dude, whatever the case may be. There are different holds from there in terms of controlling wrists and so forth. Obviously splitting that arm is a major thing, and then controlling his wrist from there, but those require really finite motions and you have to train a long time to get them right, especially in a high pressure situation. So what we're relying on at the moment is gross motor skills, natural reactions, things that can be applied really quickly. Cool.
So hopefully you got a little bit out of that. Final little clip here, and this is really important, guys. If you're going to be grappling in a part and throwing on arm bars, you need to be situationally aware of killer dogs coming out of nowhere and trying to lick you to death. This is the result of what happens when they're around. So as you can see, guys, just be so aware, Shnoodles are the silent killer of the animal kingdom. Look, you know, I don't like to sort of sit and say that there are deficiencies in other styles. I'm only talking about that, as I say, from a self-defense point of view. But realistically, all styles, if they're catering to the spiritual needs of a person, you know, that sense of peace, sense of well-being, sense of community, then it doesn't matter whether or not they work in a self-defense way, if that makes sense. But if what you're trying to learn is, you know, how to defend yourself, I just think it's important to be realistic about whether or not what you're being taught is real. And again, I sort of go back to the YouTube channel McDojo, because they do a lot of breakdowns on these fake styles, and I always sit there and I go, how do these people get sucked into this? Like YouTube yellow bamboo style, it's crazy that they think that sound is going to stop someone from attacking them. But people want to believe stuff. And if it's never pressure tested and never tested against another style, they're going to go on believing it, unfortunately. So I had another question from another person, and he said to me, what in my background prepared me the most for real world violence? Which is a really, really good question, because I think, and I was thinking about it, because, you know, some people can go their whole lives training in a style and still in a real life situation, that adrenaline dump happens and they freeze up. So there has to be something that, you know, makes you prepared for what the realities of violence. And for me, I guess, as I've mentioned before, I was bullied at school pretty badly, so I was already, you know, in my childhood, I'd seen a certain amount of violence anyway, so I had that in me that I wasn't overly terrified of violence. So even before I started training, that was there. And then when I started foot and fist boxing, because it's so heavily influenced by sparring, and I'm so used to people trying to punch me and kick me and all these things, I guess it took the sensitivity away a little bit. And I started doing security quite young, so I would have only been about, I think, 23 or 24 when I started bouncing. And I did it because I wanted to know whether or not what I was learning was realistic. And the things that I sort of saw as a bouncer and so on, I guess you get a little desensitized to violence doing that. And then as I went along in my career, I've always been in a security-based area. I guess the last couple of few jobs I've had, it's been a little bit higher level than normal. But I think that real-world experience is what's prepared me the most. Coupled with the training. Had I have had no training, I'm sure I would have freaked out a lot more. But seeing in training, you see people get cut, you see people get broken bones, all this sort of stuff. I've broken my bones, I've been cut. So blood and all those sort of things are sort of par for the course in a way. So when you see them in the street, it doesn't freak you out as much. It's not as confrontational. Aggression is not as scary to me as maybe it is to someone else. And I talk about this with my girlfriend all the time. And what may freak one person out of someone just being a little bit rude, to me is absolutely nothing, because I used to get abused all the time at work. So I think that's really important. I think that real world experience, you can't replace that, and you kind of have to seek it out a little bit and really put yourself in positions where you see it. And I think that the training, you have to be trained to be prepared for that, and you have to be willing to sort of put yourself in some uncomfortable positions. And that sort of segues really nicely, because I'm going to leave it there today. But speaking of uncomfortable positions, the next episode I'm going to start talking about my BJJ background, and my grappling and all of those things. And that's where being uncomfortable and being used to that is so important. So guys, I hope you enjoyed today's little episode. It's a bit shorter than normal because I wanted to split the two up. But take care of each other. Be kind. It's always going to be my message. Be kind, because the world that we live in today, there's enough hatred, there's enough anger. We don't need it. Martial artists have the ability to be kind, so do it. See you next time.